Good evening, everyone. Thanks for coming out in the heat. I'm going to start with a poem from Zen Master Bon Soeng, who is, I guess you'd say, he's my great-grand teacher. Zen Master Soeng, founding teacher, was his grand teacher. And you can substitute the word heat for tired. Although when I picked this poem this afternoon, I was both hot and tired. So this is a poem for Buddha's birthday. Very tired, so the dream is very complicated. This morning a bird gave a Dharma speech to me. Today is Tiger Year's Buddha's birthday. 100 grasses understand themselves yellow and red. So I thought of the poem, like I said, because I was tired and hot, and my mind felt very complicated. And I knew I had to come here to give this Dharma talk today. So I relied on my old friend Mangam to remember that he also was tired and his mind got very complicated. So that's our human condition. Things happen. We have feelings, we have desires, we have needs, we have anger, we have disappointments, and our minds become confused with them. We become fixated on things. And in that fixation, our minds close down, essentially. And we've got to live with that. We've got to do something with that. I was working with someone whose brother died, and the two were very close, and it's pretty recent. So I was seeing this person, and the feelings were pretty raw. And the person was saying he found himself both being critical of himself, judgmental about all the things he wasn't. This is an older person. And looking back on his life, he realized that he was, in the mindset he was in, he was picking at pretty much everything he had done. Basically feeling his life hadn't been worth very much. He hadn't done very much, hadn't had much impact, and now he had a close-hand view to see that he's going to die. And it was a big so what feeling to it. It's like, what is this life? Why are we here? What are we going to do? And it struck me in listening that most of us are in the same boat. What's the point? What are we doing? Why are we doing it? And even if we're passionate and connected, there's a feeling like that also will end. And we can't escape the understanding that we're going to die. We offer this reading for the very first interview that somebody has when they come to Empty Gate Zen Center, really anywhere in the Quantum School of Zen. The human root, coming empty-handed, going empty-handed, that is human. When you're born, where do you come from? When you die, where do you go? Life is like a floating cloud which appears. Death is like a floating cloud which disappears. The floating cloud itself originally does not exist. Life and death, coming and going, are also like that. But there is one thing which always remains clear. It is pure and clear, not depending on life and death. Then what is the one pure and clear thing? beginning of this poem, it points out the predicament. I think in the 70s there was a song by the Jefferson Starship, something like, we come into this world unsheltered and all alone. That's how we come in. I think it said, and for sure that's how we go out. We make lots of connections along the way. Some of us find a life partner. Some of us have children. Some of us have jobs. We all find our way. One way or another, we walk along the path that we find ourselves on. When I say it that way, I think you have to say without realizing that where we actually end up being the chief architect of the path that we walk on. But oftentimes we're not aware that we're doing it. We blame others for it, but we find ourselves stuck and we have to go through with it. This poem says, life is like a floating cloud which appears. Death is like a floating cloud which disappears. The floating cloud itself originally does not exist. The floating cloud a cloud, what is it? It's water that coagulates together in the sky. And then it dissipates. That's our life. It comes together and it goes. If there's any hope at all, it comes in the last few lines of the poem. But, it says, there is one thing which always remains clear. It is pure and clear, not depending on life and death. Then it asks the question, what is the one pure and clear thing? That's the opening to the Zen way. What is the one pure and clear thing? Later, as we discuss the poem, we go on to this point of before thinking mind, before you make something, being alive in the present moment, hearing the sound of the fan, feeling the breeze as the air moves about, coming back to this moment. Completely connected with everything that's come before. Completely ready for what comes next. Before and next are our thinking. But right now, we can hear the fan. We can feel the breeze. I think I'm giving you a very depressing talk. But I'm going to make it a little bit worse. The other thing the person said is, as they were talking about the death and their feelings, was they could feel this huge gap between, the way it was put was, between their interior and their exterior. Think about it. Between what your inner experience is like and what you present to the world. In many ways, it seems to me that that gap is where the suffering arises. Even if it's difficult, even if it's painful, things are as they are. And inasmuch as we can connect with them and be with it, become it in a sense, then there's no separation. There's no room for the mind-made, person-made suffering. But our disconnection, our turning away, it's funny how things connect together. Just before I came here, I got a call from somebody who wanted to work with me as a therapist. And in talking to them, she said, well, I suppose my biggest problem is I drink a little too much, and I probably eat a little too much, and I realize that pretty much the reason I'm doing that is to self-medicate. We have this experience, but we don't want to deal with it. We don't want to face it. We don't want to live it. So we grasp at whatever we can get to separate us away from it. And for the moment, it might feel like it takes care of the problem. But there become points in our lives where we realize that it's actually making the problem worse, because it's widening the gap between interior and exterior. Sometimes in Zen we use language like inside and outside become one. Psychologically we call it congruence. Your inner experience, your outward expression are connected. Some of you have heard this example I use, but if you read a novel, you'll be reading the inner dialogue of the character, and you'll hear this long paragraph, or you'll read this long paragraph about how this person hates the person they're dealing with. All the different things they've done wrong, all the things they don't like about them. It's this long list of horrible things. And then you get one line of dialogue. Fred, how wonderful it is to see you. It's been so too long. And then you go back to the inner dialogue. That's our life. So we're stuck in this dilemma. And the beauty of what the Buddha taught was that there's a way out of this dilemma. But the way out of the dilemma is not theoretical. It's actually, you could read all the Buddhist texts, I think there's 84,000 of them, and still you won't know how to get out. You'll read some words that you'll think, oh, this is terrific. Now I know. But it won't help you too much. The beauty of the Buddhist path is that we practice. We do it. Just as we did tonight. Our practice is bowing, chanting, fundamentally and mostly sitting meditation. Chanting is chanting meditation. Bowing is bowing meditation. Right now, I'm doing talking meditation. Right now, the rest of us are doing listening meditation. But meditation means connecting with our own true nature. Connecting with our own true nature requires a connection with that inner experience. I've worked with people before and asked them, how do you think? Do you think in words? Do you think in pictures? What's your connection with your thoughts? And they've looked at me dumbfounded. I said, I don't know. That's a little extreme. Most of us have some sense of what's going on inside. But probably we don't realize that all the rest of us in this room have just as much going on inside of them too. Sometimes I think it's amazing that the universe is big enough to hold it all. So we have this simple practice. Some people love it. Some people will come. Our head Dharma teacher Marshall said to me on Saturday, he got up, it was Labor Day weekend. He said, I thought I would sleep in, but I just never get enough of practice. So we got up at 6 o'clock and he came to the Zen Center, came over from San Francisco. Some people are like that. Most of us have to drag our asses into the meditation hall. We'll have a million different reasons why something else is better to do. Because we're grasping at outside things, thinking that's going to fix it. But our practice brings us back to going inside, what am I? And then just watching, observing. I saw this quote on Facebook a few days ago, and it was put up by one of our sister Zen centers, the one in Kansas Zen Center, and it's actually a quote by a man named Zen Master Bon Soeng, who's the teacher in our school in New York City, and apparently it's from a book he wrote in 2004. And he said, for Kyung Ho, if you turn around and you look into the middle of those pictures above the door, that's him. Kyung Ho is credited with kind of revitalizing the Zen tradition in Korea in the mid-late 1800s, maybe even the early 1900s. So he said, for Kyung Ho, the practice of Zen was ultimately oriented toward appearing in the marketplace with helping hands. For us, that means the last word of Zen is, how do I keep my mind in daily life and manifest the original freedom of the true human being? I grant you I'd probably choose a few different words than he did, but there's a point here. If our primary practice is sitting in this room, whether we're bowing, chanting, or mostly sitting, although some people lie down, some people stand up, but asking this great question, what am I? And observing, watching, connecting with that inner experience. Even Marshall can only do that so much. Then he's got to be with his family. Then he has to be at his work. Then we have to connect with our life. So the first step is to connect with ourselves. The second step is to connect with this world. We chanted Kwanseum Bosal. Kwanseum Bosal means hearing the cries of the world. So as we connect with ourselves, actually it helps us connect with the rest of the world, with all beings. Because this becomes a moment where you might have this experience of recognizing that you and the world are not separate. That you and I are in some ways connected. And if I can move outside of my self-centeredness, it actually frees up energy. So Kwanseum Bosal is, the statues of Kwanseum Bosal are often made with 1,000 hands. And each hand has an eye. So each hand can perceive what's needed. And just do that. So all of us here have an everyday life. We work, we love, we sleep, we eat, we connect. If we can break through all the self-centeredness, all the constrictions of mind, that our sitting practice helps us perceive and drop, then we can connect. Then we can offer ourselves up. Then we can be with in a way that adds something to the world, that gives a little peace, maybe a little help, maybe a little fun. And then that depressing quality of our lives can shift into the magnificence of just feeling the breeze, seeing the beauty. We live in this incredible place. I'm fortunate enough to have a walk that heads up into the hills right outside my house, and a like a few times a week, I get up at the top of the hill and I look out at the whole Bay Area. I can see the Richmond Bridge, I can see the Golden Gate Bridge, I can see the Bay Bridge, and on some days I can see the Hayward Bridge. It's this incredible view. And when you read in poetry that the mountains are blue, from that vantage point that you can actually see they are blue. This incredible world that we're right in the midst of. If we can break through the small-mindedness, what can open up is this magnificence. So the Buddha, people remember that the Buddha taught that everything in life is imbued with suffering. But sometimes it gets forgotten that he said there's a way out of that suffering. And the way out of that suffering is to live our lives with wisdom, with compassion, with awareness, with connection to that interior, so that the interior and exterior can become one. And to give our energy away, not to hoard, not to grab for ourselves, but to embrace. It's the same motion. You can grab something, or you can embrace something. Grabbing it is for me. Embracing it is for us. So what we have here at the Zen Center is a way to find out how to be that. How to transform our grabbing into embracing. To take the difficulty, to take the mundaneness, and to even take the beauty and make it alive. Even the ugliness has its purpose. Even the ugliness, the killing, the despair, can be turned into energy, into beauty, and into awakeness. We have a choice. We can stay stuck, or we can wake up. What we do makes our life. How we keep our minds makes the world we live in. Which one do you like? Which one do you want? It's not such an easy question. The easy answer is I want enlightenment. But you've got to look deeper. You've got to really connect. What am I? Questions? Comments? Anything anybody wants to talk about?
Thank you for your talk. So what we do retreats, there is a pretty set of parameters of what we are doing, what we are not doing, when we are doing, and so on and so forth. It's very well defined. Now, it seems like to, as you say, bring practice into our lives out there, we need to also define our lives a little better. Maybe put some restrictions on them, or put some particular direction. So, if one is a person, a regular person who has like a job and a family, like where would you suggest they start on retreatizing their life?
Stay in touch with yourself. Be aware of your experience. Sometimes it's stated, be aware of awareness. Feel the breeze. When you're angry, feel the anger. Connect with what's happening right now. That's the start. Keep the question, what am I? Which means moment to moment to moment, what's happening? whole experience. Start there. When we do retreat, the purpose of that kind of structure that you're talking about is to take away likes and dislikes. We say, in our language, we say, follow the situation. The situation's set up so you don't have to think too much. Just do what's right in front of you. You can bring that to your everyday life. When you're at your job, you've got your job set up for you. Do it. Most of the time we get lost in what we like about it, what we don't like about it, or we drift off into talking to people, trying to get away from what we're doing. Come back to it. In a lot of ways, my work gives me a lot of good fortune in that, because I just have to be there and be with what's happening in the moment. I don't have a choice. Like as a psychotherapist, somebody comes in, I got an hour. I can't leave and go talk to somebody at the water fountain. I've got to be there. But if you have the kind of job where you can drift, it's harder. So follow your schedule. Do what needs to be done. When you're with your wife, pay attention to her. When you're feeling irritation, notice your irritation. Work with your situation. Whatever life is offering to you right now, connect with it, be it, break down that separation and become it. There's never no retreat. It's all a retreat. There's no escape, there's nowhere to go. But we're constantly going, trying to find one. But there's nowhere to go. Because you're bringing yourself everywhere you are. So stay connected. Keep paying attention. Okay?
Thank you. It was such a beautiful talk. I'm just curious, do you think that's where a lot of anxiety comes from? Is just sort of wanting to escape the moment?
Yes. Basically, I mean, there's a little more to it than this, but simply put, I think anxiety is about not being able to hold the experience you have. And this is a tough antidote, but it's counterintuitive. It's go into it. You know, we'll sometimes say, make the container big enough to hold it. And then there's less, because anxiety is resistance.
Yeah, I kind of feel like sometimes I'll feel like a trapped animal inside, and I start feeling like I want to escape.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's nowhere to go.
Where are you going to go? But you can bring your breath down. You can slow your breath down. It's pretty much been proven. If you can slow your breath down, your system will calm down. Your parasympathetic nervous system will calm down. It takes work. It's not easy. But if you just slow your breath and experience your breath, over time it will calm you. Some people find that their hands get cold when they're anxious. There's one, it's not really a meditation. If this can be shown, I used to have a bunch of these little tiny handheld thermometers. If you imagine your blood going to your fingertips, it will go there. And your hands will warm and your anxiety will dissipate. It's just working with your inner process. So just work with your breath. It's all a matter of coming back to yourself and finding the capacity to hold it. I mean, when I say things like this, it sounds so easy, but it's not, especially if you're anxious. But I would start off without rejecting anything, your anxiety or yourself. There's probably times you get angry, and and judgmental and critical, and that just makes it worse. If you're dealing with it, just deal with it. Okay. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
So I have sort of I've had sort of opposite situation of feeling very in touch with what I'm feeling, and like a few years ago I was especially personally and somewhat professionally unhappy, and I don't have much of a problem of connecting my outside to my inside, and I would walk around work really grumpy because I was in a pretty bad place. And somebody that I respected very much said, you walk around like you've got daggers shooting out of your eyes. But to me, it felt authentic and whole, and there was something that felt good about having my outside match my inside. But I was completely unaware of the impact that it was having on anyone else. I wasn't even thinking that anybody was paying attention to me. But there's something that feels inauthentic about portraying something that I wasn't feeling so that other people felt more at ease. And so learning to navigate sort of staying connected to the feelings that you're having, but also not dumping it out on everybody else, because that wasn't my intention, but that's what happened.
It's a tricky question. I mean, kind of a simpler example is if your inner experience is anger, that doesn't mean you should go around punching people. There's a middle ground somewhere between being false and dumping your stuff on other people. And you said you didn't even realize that it was happening. I think what I heard you say is that in your mind, nobody was even paying attention. In a way, that shows you're still stuck in your view without really taking in the whole environment. So, inside and outside becoming one includes all of it. So, I think the most helpful point you were given was that recognize, so it was a helpful pointer to remind you, look around for some feedback to tell you what it really looks like. Because we can't tell. There's a difference between bitching and moaning in your mind about somebody and then being effusive when you see that person, like the example I gave in the novel. And being clear about your experience, but not acting it out. Congruence doesn't mean you're just acting it out, but there's an awareness and a connection to the way you are. And that includes the whole environment. Sometimes there's an artificial separation between me and you, me and the environment. So when I think about what am I as a question, it includes everything. So just make your awareness broader and bigger.